The NFL draft is behind us, and that means we finally have all of the information we need. We have landing spots, we have draft capital, we have everything. We can update our rookie tiers, we can get into our final rookie running back tiers for draft season here. So let's just dive right in at the 1. All right, we'll start tier 1. This is not new, this has not changed. It is Bijan Robinson. He obviously goes to Atlanta in the first, and that's the best. That is the best landing spot he could have had. We know what Arthur Smith is capable of doing with, average or below average running backs. What he's going to be able to do with Bijan Robinson is going to be nothing short of spectacular. He is going to be an absolute monster. He has the receiving upside, should they actually choose to pass with Desmond Ridder, and he obviously has the ability to break runs, to just finish runs, to get into the end zone, to do everything you need an elite running back to be able to do. Bijan Robinson is the Dynasty RB1. He is a top 10 pick when we get to redraft season. Bijan is just going to be an absolute stud. Moving to tier 2, again, no change whatsoever. It is Jahmyr Gibbs, and honestly, Jahmyr Gibbs got closer to Bijan Robinson after the NFL draft, right? There's really not a tier 3. It goes like tier 2 to tier 4 because Gibbs has just separated himself so much now. Going in the first, not only the first, but going 12th overall to the Detroit Lions changes his comps, right? It takes him from a Giovanni Bernard comp to a Christian McCaffrey type of comp, right? Obviously, size is slightly different, and he'll need to put on some weight to really hold up in the NFL. But he is such an elite receiver, right? He has 4.3 speed. DeAndre Swift is gone. Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be utilized how we all wished, I say we, myself, how I hoped DeAndre Swift had been utilized in Detroit. Jahmyr Gibbs is a top 10 dynasty running back, and honestly, he's not in the back half of that top 10. Jahmyr Gibbs has cemented himself as one of the best running backs you can own in terms of value, and honestly, I think once he gets on the field, we're going to see him being at 199 instead of 200 pounds. Really doesn't matter all that much. He's just going to be a damn good player. I mean, we saw the video of how excited this Lions team was to reach on Jahmyr Gibbs at 12. They're going to make sure everybody regrets that. That's how I'm going to view it. He is just going to be utilized significantly more than I think most people anticipate, and that is going to make him a smash pick in your rookie drafts. Now, getting into tier 3, this is where we have movement, we have shakeups, we have unexpected players. At the top of tier 3, my RB3 now is Kendre Miller. Previously, it was Zach Charbonnet. Zach Charbonnet got the second-round draft capital. We'll talk about why he's not RB3 in a sec. But Kendre Miller goes to the New Orleans Saints in the 3rd round, and while he was already in tier 3 for me, he jumps to the top of tier 3 because not only does he have the prototypical size that we care about, right? 5'11", 215. He also lands on a team that appears to be searching for their new lead running back, right? Alvin Kamara is obviously going to be a massive part of this offense. He is the RB1, but he's getting up there in age. He is dealing with legal trouble. He probably will be suspended to start this season at least 6 games. So there's going to be immediate opportunity for Miller, right, when he's competing with Jamal Williams to earn that RB2 role in this offense. So Kendre Miller, while he may not be, right, the absolute RB1 in New Orleans, I think he is the RB1 to open the season when Kamara is suspended. And in an offense that just added Derek Carr, has Chris Olave, gets Michael Thomas back, that is just a great landing spot for year 1 production. And when you look at what Miller does well, he is a short yardage hammer, right? He very well could take the goal line work away from Jamal Williams. Jamal Williams was not that efficient. He was just very good inside the red zone. Miller could be better, and Miller brings a skill set that Jamal Williams does not, right? He was 3rd in college football in forced missed tackles last season. So he has wiggle. While he may not be an elite receiving back, he still has capability there. So there is potential for him to finish as an RB2 in year 1, and that is enough for me to put him at RB3. Next up, it is Zach Charbonnet. Even with him landing in Seattle in the 2nd round, getting paired with Kenneth Walker, I cannot slide Charbonnet much lower. Charbonnet, again, we know the player. He has the stereotypical size, right? 6 foot, 214. He has elite contact balance. He's an above average receiver. His ability after first contact is spectacular. His vision is great. All of these things are what you want to see from a running back. And the NFL felt the same way, right? He went in the 2nd round. It just so happened to be he went to a spot with another top 5 dynasty running back. Addison called it out in our live stream on Friday morning before round 2. that is probably one of the worst spots for Charbonnet to land.
Colts, Jets, Seahawks.
But I am a talent over situation guy. So while he does take a minor hit, Charbonnet does not fall below RB4. The reason is they're going to utilize both guys. Zach Charbonnet will be on the field. And I don't think there's any question he is a better pass catcher than Kenneth Walker, who only had a 6% target share last season. Charbonnet could fill in the receiving role there and still get some other work between the tackles on first and second down. It's going to be a true split. And while he probably will not have the chance to be a top 12 running back, injuries happen. If Kenneth Walker goes down, Zach Charbonnet becomes your elite handcuff. Like, he is probably one of the best handcuffs in the NFL day one, and he's not even a true handcuff. He's more of a 1B in this offense. Pete Carroll is going to utilize both guys. I'd be very surprised if they spend this pick and don't get Charbonnet, 150 touches year one. So we were hoping for much better. But Zach Charbonnet as a prospect is still a great player. The second round draft capital, I think, confirms what the NFL thought of his talent. The situation is just slightly worse than, it's much worse than anticipated. So Charbonnet, like in the early second, is where you should be looking to get him. And if I get him there, I am extremely excited ahead of these other running backs we're about to talk about. Next, at RB5, it is Devon Achane, and we'll talk about why he's not higher on this list, but let's talk about the situation first. He lands in Miami. You can't get any better than that. Everybody wants that Kyle Shanahan tree of offense as a runner, right? That one cut, slash, and get upfield is exactly what Devon Achane does well. From a scheme perspective, right, that zone scheme, this is exactly what you wanted for him, right? Tied to Tua as well. There should be enough receiving upside that year one, we're going to see what Devon Achane has in the tank, right? He's competing with Jeff Wilson. He is competing with Raheem Mostert. And while they are good and they fit the scheme very well, they are clearly searching for somebody to hopefully stay healthy and to just operate as a true one in this offense. They're going to give him every opportunity. He is going to have a bunch of chances to take over this backfield and take it over very early. Now, the reason he is not moving up higher is we still have to care about the prospect profile, right? Going in the third is great. Landing with Miami is fantastic. Achane is still a severely undersized running back, right? Coming in at 5'9", 188. It's not the same as Jahmyr Gibbs at 5'9", 199, right? People are mad about Gibbs not being 200, and he's a pound off. Devon Achane is 12 pounds under. And yeah, like, we want guys to bulk up. He may be able to do that, but we don't know if it's a guarantee. So at his size, there's already concerns just because typically guys that small don't have a ton of fantasy success, at least consistently. So it's really going to be prospect and profile versus landing spot and draft capital. That is the argument here. Now, to our last running back in Tier 3, it is Tank Bigsby, who goes round 3 to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And surface level, gross, right? Travis Etienne is there. He is a fantastic runner. He's a good receiver. He's a first-round running back in the NFL. But when you start to dig in, I think these two players complement each other very, very well. Etienne is speed and receiving, where Tank Bigsby can be a hammer and really handle some of the work between the tackles. He has the size, right? Again, at 6 foot, 210, he has enough ability when it comes to catching the ball. Should Etienne go down, I think he would have a massive workload. And then again, he handles running between the tackles extremely well. He is a great short yardage runner. He can, bounce off of guys. He can deliver punishment, again, in between the 20s. Those are things he can do very well. He enters this as an elite handcuff with enough, I think, standalone value to be like a low-end or mid-level RB3 with some flex appeal if he falls into the end zone. So as a player, I really like Tank Bigsby. Would have liked him to have a little bit more of an open path to workload. But again, he comes in as one of the priority ads for me in this draft class as a handcuff, especially if you have Travis Etienne. And, as things go on, Etienne was not drafted by this draft or by this coaching staff. That will factor in at some point. Bigsby, I think, will be a slightly more involved than some of us are expecting. Now we are moving to Tier 4, and this is a small tier for me. Honestly, it's two guys. The first one being Tyjae Spears, who gets day 2 draft capital. Great, goes in round 3. Unfortunately, he lands with Tennessee. The reason he is not up in Tier 3 is also there are medical concerns about him just long term. If you've seen the reports, he may not have an ACL in one of his knees, or he doesn't have an ACL in one of his knees if he gets on the field, right? At 5'10", 201, it's enough. He has enough size to be dangerous. He has good vision. He is extremely agile. He's honestly very good through contact. What he doesn't do well or doesn't have a ton of experience doing is catching the ball. So in reality, he's like an undersized Derrick Henry, which is kind of weird. Landing obviously behind Derrick Henry as well. Should he go down, again, Spears becomes another one of those premium ad handcuffs, and that still has a ton of value, right? In the middle of the second, I'm fine to take Tyjae Spears. Preferably, I'd like to trade out, but if I can't do it, fine, I'll grab Spears because the upside is apparent. It is there. I just don't think it's going to be for very long. Now, the last player in this tier, it is our first day 3 running back. It is Roschon Johnson, who goes in the 4th round to Chicago. Now, unfortunately, he slips to day 3. The flip side is he lands in Chicago, a team that really has 3 running backs that could win this job. Between Herbert, Foreman, and Roschon Johnson, it is anybody's game. He could be a guy that has a ton of value in year 1 if he beats out both players, right? Chicago is going to run the ball. They love to run the ball, and they do it very, very well. So Roschon Johnson has upside. He has appeal, and that's the reason he lands in tier 4 is, to me, he is the most obvious pick of all of the day 3 running backs to potentially be a starter in year 1. Do I want him long term? No, of course not. If he wins the job and balls out, I'll probably look to flip him like I do with any other day 3 running back. But if I am looking for cheap production, Roschon Johnson could provide that. And depending on your draft, he could be there in the 3rd round. He could be a late 2nd. He has a very, very good value pick, right? Him and Tyjae Spears are interesting because they could have the same length career, but Roschon Johnson, even being drafted later, could have more fantasy relevant games without injury helping him. So Roschon Johnson needs to be on your radar as the first day 3 running back off the board. Now to tier 5, we have 4 more day 3 running backs here. At the top of the list, it is Chase Brown. He ends up behind Joe Mixon, I think, as the clear-cut handcuff now. And if you listened to us a couple weeks ago or this entire draft season, we basically said Chase Brown feels like he's just going to be a really good handcuff in the NFL, and it looks like he's going to get a shot to do that. Chase Brown, 5'10", 209, 23 years old, coming off of a hyper-productive final season at Illinois. Now, that came on the back of volume. He puts up 1,600 yards, but averages only 5 yards a carry. So not super productive on a per-touch basis, but was clearly good enough to earn a lot of volume. And honestly, after the combine, he rose up my rankings because he just tested out as a much better athlete than I anticipated. Right? You're looking at a guy with an 88th percentile speed score who didn't really show it on tape. So I think that was surprising, and it's something to keep in mind. But Chase Brown is going to be solid if he gets the opportunity, right? Should Joe Mixon go down, get cut, get traded, Chase Brown could step up and be a low-end RB2 given enough volume. So Chase Brown, even on day 3, right, in the 5th round, there's handcuff appeal here. And that is why he's behind Roschon Johnson and Tyjae Spears, who just have better draft capital and an easier path to production. Next up, it is my favorite sleeper, Israel Abanikanda, who gets drafted but goes in the 6th round and unfortunately lands on the Jets. And obviously Breece Hall is the one. He's the Dynasty RB2. Breece Hall is just a freak of nature. Abanikanda is not going to have a ton of value unless something happens to Breece Hall yet again, right? At 5'11", 216, coming off of a true breakout season. You're talking 1,500 yards, almost or just over 20 touchdowns at only 20 years old. There is just a lot to like about Abanikanda, and if he can sit and learn, maybe he becomes the clear-cut handcuff to Breece Hall. And if that's the case, like I want a piece of that in this offense. He's going to be competing with Zonovan Knight and Michael Carter. He may not even make the roster, but I think he is talented enough. I think there is enough skill that he should find a role in the NFL. It's just most likely not going to be a fantasy relevant one without a bunch of injuries. Next up, it is Zach Evans, who has just continued to fall down my rankings as we've gotten further and further into and now post-draft. And honestly, Zach Evans, 6th round to the Los Angeles Rams. At its face value, the situation's interesting because it's Cam Akers and who else, right? Kyron Williams, who clearly wasn't good, I don't think, at this point. I think we can all say that. So there is an opportunity, again, for him to step in and also just be the handcuff in this offense. The flip side is Zach Evans just wasn't a very good prospect, and the NFL didn't think so either, right? There was a ton of college production issues. There was limited receiving upside. He's a very good runner between the tackles, but there's just wasn't enough over his career coming out as the top ranked or one of the top ranked college prospects that he just never really lived up to expectations. This feels like he got picked because somebody's looking at high school tape going, man, the pedigree on Zach Evans could be awesome. Again, if you want to pick him at the very end of the third, you want to scoop him off of waivers if he doesn't get drafted, that's fine, but don't look at this situation and talk yourself into he's about to displace Cam Akers. That could happen. I don't think it is the likely outcome here. And finally, at the end of this tier, this hurts me. He goes undrafted. It is Sean Tucker. And Sean Tucker signs with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And very similar to Zach Evans, he looks as if he could earn a handcuff role day one. Sean Tucker, I think, fell out of the draft due to a ton of health concerns, right? He has issues with his heart and every other piece of his body, it seems. So Sean Tucker does not get drafted, but had a hyper-productive college career. 5'9", 207, has the size, has the track speed, has the receiving ability. All of these things could be great for Sean Tucker. But again, the health concerns are a massive, enormous, glaring red flag here. There's not much else we can say. He might be the backup to Rachaad White. He could also just not make the final roster. Sean Tucker is a guy I love. Again, end of the third. Same with Zach Evans. They need things to break their way. Clearly, the NFL is not excited or in on these players, and we should not be, risking the house to go all in on them either. And lastly, guys, there's just 4 other names I want to throw out there. Keep them on your radar. Guys to scoop up after the end of your draft or, again, at the end of the third here. They're not in tier 5. They're just kind of lumped in with everybody else, but I think they stand out enough. I should mention them. 1, it is Evan Hall landing with the Colts. He's basically a receiving specialist with enough size and fills a role that Nyheim Hines left behind. So should Anthony Richardson all of a sudden start checking it down a lot, Evan Hall could have value. Again, just something to keep in mind. Probably not a fantasy star in the making. Next up, it is Eric Gray, who goes to the Giants in the 5th round. And Eric Gray, if you're not familiar, was one of Addison's, sleepers, a guy to keep an eye on. And he lands in a spot where he very well could be the handcuff and, displace Matt Breida. He's just a good all-around back, has receiving upside, can run between the tackles. Unfortunately, he's just so painfully unathletic that I don't know if we can really get excited about Eric Gray. But, again, a good guy to keep on your radar as a potential handcuff later in the season. Next up, it is Dwayne McBride, who lands with Minnesota in the 7th. He should slot in as the RB3 and honestly was one of the better runners in college this year. Guys like Mel Kiper loved Dwayne McBride. He was one of his top 10 running backs. Clearly, the NFL did not feel the same way, but his ability to run is near the top in this class, it feels like, especially between the tackles. And should Dalvin Cook get hurt? Should Alexander Madison go down, right? Should things happen this season? He's one of those players that could be a bye-week fill-in, can fall into the end zone like Matt Asiata used to do back in the day. That is the path for Dwayne McBride. Finally, Keaton Mitchell goes undrafted but signs with Baltimore. And yes, right, they have Gus Edwards and other pieces. He is a freak athlete and a big play threat every time he touches the ball. He may end up being like a special teams ace or a kick returner or whatever. But should he find his way onto the field, he's an exciting player. I think a guy that if he gets opportunity could pop. But again, probably not drafting him and most likely a pickup on waivers after your rookie draft. All right, guys, that is all I have for you. Again, thank you for watching. If you have questions, you have comments, drop it down below. As always, we will see you guys next time.